Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Thursday, the 19th of May, 2022. And I've got some news for you. Without sales, business fails. Without sales, business fails. And selling is the core of your business. If you can't make a sale, you'll never be able to build a business. If you can't make a sale, you can't hire people. If you can't make a sale, you've got no place to live in. And if you're anything like our guest today, if you can't make sales, you'll be sleeping on the bathroom floor, and you'll have a couple of cents left in your bank account. But I'll tell you what, once you learn how to sell, you can start to get billionaire investors into your business. So Ryan, thanks for joining us today on the Accelerate and Multiply live stream. Good to see you here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love your intro. It gets me motivated. I was looking at my team out there going, watch this. I just wanted to watch the whole thing. It's great. So thanks for having me, mate. Always a pleasure. You know that.
My pleasure, mate. I was in Dubai a couple of years ago, and one of my friends who worked at Emirates Airlines with me had a talent and a skill in videography. And he said, come on over and we'll spend a whole week filming in Dubai. So I think we started to film that in about 2018. And we had all these lovely dreams and hopes and wishes to do it again in 2020. He lost his job. The world shut down, and I haven't seen him since. So our little bromance has fallen apart.
I've seen those videos. The transitions are phenomenal. The ones you've got out there are really, really cool.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Well, I'll line you up when you go to the UK next. He's a good British boy, and he'll be over there ready to go.
Yeah, nice. Awesome.
He'll make you look more handsome than you really are. I mean, than you actually. Well, you are. You are.
It goes work out. Yeah.
You are. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think something we want to explore today is where Ryan has come from and where he's got through today. And I think, like all of us, we have these dreams that we want to be rich. And we 5 and 6 and 7, I've got a 5-year-old son, and he's dreaming about his future. I've got a 10-year-old daughter who's dreaming about her future. And we start with all these amazing, beautiful dreams. And as we get up older, we start to imagine we're going to quit our career and start our own business, get into sales, make a fortune. But these dreams become nightmares at times. And what we want, we end up feeling that we're actually a long way away from it. So you had made a big shift in your life. You left the UK and you made your way all over the way here to Australia. So what was the dream that you started with, and what did that reality look like in the following 18 months?
It's quite interesting because I'm reflecting a lot on this at the moment. I've actually signed up, rightly or wrongly, to do a professional debate at the Gold Coast Women of Influence National Conference with 400 women, and I'm going up against 3 lawyers. And the topic of the debate is that financial power is the greatest form of influence, and I'm in the opposing team. So I'm going to debate that no, it is not the greatest form of influence. And what that has made me do is really look back on the catalyst to moving over to Australia and the conversations that I had, and what was the motivation. I definitely don't think it was ever a dream to become a salesperson. I never ever dreamt to be a salesperson. I only ever dreamt about one thing, and that was to be a professional footballer, of which didn't come to fruition. But I guess the catalyst for me was working with a Scottish guy actually named Merv, who would be despondent this morning because his beloved Glasgow Rangers lost in the final of the European Cup this morning. And he was telling me about his life that he wanted to move over to Australia many, many moons ago. And his girlfriend at the time, or his partner, was a nurse, and they could have moved over. And long story short, they never did it. And all I heard every day at work for 12-hour days, 12-hour nights, covered in grease and oil as a mechanical maintenance engineer was, I wish I had. And I remember just dropping into a conversation once with Merv that I would love to go to Australia as well. It would be great to move over here. Not career-wise, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think just the reinforcement of that message of what might have been, that I was going to potentially live with the regret that he did, or the opportunities that he could have realized. That's what encouraged me to move over here. Couple that with my dad got pretty sick. I also lost a couple of friends to car accidents when they were in their 20s. And I think a few things happen in your life that make you go, do you know what? I'm going to roll the dice here and move over here. I definitely never planned on getting into sales though.
So you made your way over to Australia. There's been some major significant emotional events that have made you question, your life's goals. And, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that if we don't have goals, if we don't have hopes, if we don't have ambitions, we actually have nothing to live for. So there's something there for you to live for, and you've come over and you've pursued a new life into Australia. Once you got here into Australia, what was life like in Australia? Was it like the postcards used to tell you? I should say that my wife, when she came to Australia, she thought she was going to see kangaroos hopping over the harbour bridges. She also was convinced that you could ride a kangaroo. And so when she got to Australia, she realised a little bit of a gap between what the dream and the postcard said in comparison to what she had when she got here.
And drop bears aren't real, right? Don't want to break anybody's heart, but yes and no. Like Sydney was. I moved to Sydney originally. Sydney got cold, which is not how they advertise it. And then I travelled the East Coast, and I think during that spell of freedom, if you will, where I was just travelling and frivolous with money, and I came over here. I'd sold my car back home. I'd given up a very comfortable life in the UK, so I had a bit of money in my pocket when I first came here, and I spent that on travels all down the East Coast, and I pretty much ended up with nothing. And when I got to the Gold Coast, that's where I kind of felt at home. There was a lot of Brits here. I was playing football for a team called Bromwich United, or soccer, and I felt very comfortable. The challenge I faced was that on a backpacker's visa, which I was at the time, you could only work for one company for 6 months, and not many companies would give me a shot. And I knew I didn't want to get back into engineering again. So I fell into the world of sales, kicking and screaming, and probably the worst type of sales. I fell into a call center. So cold calling was my gig. I had to make $300 a day. I had 90 seconds to find out if a random stranger, downright dirty cold call, had $15,000 to $25,000 liquid cash in their bank account. And that was very humbling for a real simple reason. I was no good at it. I was rubbish. There was 21 people in that company. I was 21 out of 21. I was the bottom of the board. And 3 months in, after getting abuse after abuse, day in, day out, it started to really hit me emotionally, I think. Mentally, I was drained. I was making excuses not to pick up the phone. I was going bathroom 5 or 6 times a day, so I didn't have to get abuse on the phone. And then it started to hit me financially as well. And I ended up, as you alluded to earlier, with 31 cents to my name. And I was sleeping on a bathroom floor here on the Gold Coast at a friend's house for 6 weeks on a blow-up lilo. And that was maybe a defining moment, I think, in where Swish, this business, was created inadvertently, and where I am and what I'm doing right now, because it was the day that I quit sales. And the day I quit sales was also the day that Jack, who was the sales manager at that company, pulled me aside as I handed my notice in and wouldn't let me quit. He looked me dead in the eyes and said to me, "I'm not letting you quit. You haven't even tried. You haven't even tried to immerse and truly understand the art and craft of sales." And that was really the catalyst for giving it a go. Set myself a bit of a challenge of 60 days to understand this. And I went from 21st to first in 5 weeks. And within 18 months, I was running the team of 47. And I fell in love with the process of selling, not necessarily selling. As an engineer, I loved the process. And once I realized it was a process, I realized it could be learned, and everything kind of fell into place. And now I'm very passionate about helping people recognize that we can all sell. We just need to realize that selling is not a bad thing. We can do it for the greater good as well.
I think there's a lot of people that I speak to that they go through that emotional journey, but I think they still find it very hard to articulate what they're actually going through. And the reason why I say they find it hard to articulate, some of the latest research coming out of Harvard shows that 95% of us claim that we're emotionally intelligent. But the research reveals that only 10 to 15% of us are. And a lot of people find it hard to articulate that pit of despair that you can get into in sales. And we used to have a joke in real estate that you either got into real estate sales because you were depressed, or you got out of real estate because you were depressed. So when you were going out of the office to the bathroom 4 or 5 times and you're starting to feel, burned out, for a better word, what did that look like in your life? What was that, how could you, paint that picture so people could really understand what you went through so they can better understand those signs for themselves?
Yeah, amazing question. I think I covered it up a lot outside of work. Like there was frustration. If I look at physiological changes in me, I was probably becoming more hunched over as I went into work. I wasn't I'm not an extrovert anyway. I'm a natural sort of introvert, so I'm not really somebody that's going to go in and burst into a room. But I definitely started to feel myself crouch over and be looking down more than I'd be looking up, and I'd be huffing and puffing after a phone call. If somebody gave me some abuse, it would be a lot of sighs, and I'm going to make another call. I never went down the route of, I've never done a drug in my life, but I never started drinking or anything. But I definitely felt like I was getting shorter with my girlfriend, Alicia, who's now my wife. So I had a lot less patience for people. I probably wasn't enjoying Australia as a whole. I started to question, maybe this country isn't for me. And I started to look back to my safety net, my comfort zone. I started to consider engineering again. The day I quit, I said I was going to go back to the UK. My mum and dad loved me. I could easily go back and live with them, and I would have had a very comfortable life again. So I guess I started to second guess everything. I don't know how this comes across, but I'd always been pretty decent at sports, not to your level, but I'd been okay at different sports. I'd been okay academically. I'd always worked my way up a ladder within an organization, so I'd had relative success there. So for me, sales was the first thing I'd actually failed at, and it wasn't like, are you failing? It was like, you're 21st, like you are failing, you're the worst one here. So it was documented for everyone to see, and I think that probably hit. It was embarrassing. I couldn't afford sushi at one stage for me and Alicia. Remember we sat in Broadbeach on the Gold Coast, both the two of us. She had no money either, and we sat in Sushi Train, and she said, "Oh, I don't have money on me," and I went to pay, and it was $10 something. I had $9 in my account. We had to sit there for an hour whilst her boss transferred money into her account together. This is really early on in our relationship, and it was just embarrassing. It was demoralizing, and that wasn't a fun place to be at all.
So you're at the bottom of the board. You can't afford sushi. The boss is transferring money, and then there's a bit of a gap between there and then this mentor, Jack, who was your manager at the time, who seemed to be able to help you turn it around. In that gap, what were some of those things that you had tried and didn't work? Because a lot of people, they say it's not as if I haven't tried, and they try many different things. What were some of the things that you had tried and also didn't work for you?
I think I tried, but I didn't commit. I didn't concede. And what I mean by that was, and I often do a keynote on some of the common mistakes, which have actually turned into a web class now. And the last mistake that I often talk about is naivety, and not believing that we're in sales, or not believing that sales is a skill that can be learned. And I don't think I truly conceded and committed to the fact that this could be learned. So yeah, I was reading, but I was reading it out of spite. I didn't want it to work. And I think because what Jack had done, he'd set me this target of 60 days, learn as much as you can, immerse yourself. And if you fail, as in you don't move the needle, you stay 21st, I'll pay for your flights. I'll pay for you and Alicia to go anywhere. So I think at that stage, I just went, I've got nothing to lose, whatever. And it was all like pressure was off. I just had that timeline of 60 days. I just got to get abused for 60 more days, and someone's paying for my flights. That's the way I looked at it. So I'm like, well, whatever. I'm gonna go all in for the next 60 days. And as I started to properly study and really commit to it, I started to see sequences and patterns in what people were teaching. That there was both mindset and skill set. Right? You can only motivate somebody so far, and motivation will get you started, but it won't keep you there. So the technique was as important, and we needed both. So I started to see, like with Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Ron Willingham, even Jordan Belfort, say what you want about the bloke, he showed people that there was an order of which you can do things to maximize your influence, rightly or wrongly. Don't like what he did, but it showed that there was a sequence. And I just started to see a bit of progression. Like I was able to keep people on the phone a little bit longer. I had language patterns that allowed me to control a conversation. So at the end of a sentence, I would segue straight into the next one as opposed to leaving a pause, which would mean they could interrupt and cut me off. I had what we call value builders now, or we've turned into value builders. So I would have little value statements like, one thing that I've learned in the time that I've been in this industry is over the last decade, since the research has been on this, that, and the other, one thing that I've learned is this, and people started to ask me for my opinion. And just learning tiny little things like that, I saw progression, not perfection, progression. And that was enough to get me to go in the next day and to make one more call. And before I knew it, 5 weeks later, I'm literally worked my way all the way up the board, and I was first. And the penny drops were pretty clear that sales is a process, just like engineering. And over time, as that kind of evolved, and I took Jack's role as sales manager, and I was then coaching people, I got just as much of a buzz out of coaching people than I did selling. And I realized that people were coming up to me 2 weeks into the job saying, Ryan, sales isn't for me. Sales is for the extroverts. Sales for the people that have got the gift of the gab. And I remember that was the exact conversation I had with Jack. And I thought, I know what to do with you. And that's when I fell in love with coaching.
I run some events in Australia and around the world, and one thing that I notice is that 99.99% of people who come to events come by themselves. They don't come with their boss. They don't come with their boyfriend. They don't come with their girlfriend. They don't come with their mum. They don't come with their dad. They don't come with their brother and sister. They don't come with their husband and wife. They come by themselves. Yeah. And you had an opportunity here where there was just one person who believed in you. What did that mean to you at an emotional level, just to have somebody believe in you and say, hey, if it doesn't work out, then I'll pay for wherever you want to go? What did that mean to you emotionally, just to have one person in the world in your corner at that stage who said, I believe in you and I'm going to show you the way?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, everything. Like, without those words, I wouldn't be here. This wouldn't be happening. The whole business wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have the fortune of speaking to yourself and people on all sides of the world, right? I guess it's a message that I've really taken on board moving forward, is that going back to the debate that we spoke about earlier, that our impact can be just words. Our influence can be just words. And we have an opportunity every single day to leave what I call our 60-second legacy on people. Within 60 seconds of leaving somebody's presence, they're thinking something about you. What are they thinking? And that's such a gift that we have. And I think Jack has an innate gift to be able to see that in people, but also to be able to communicate that with people. So you talk about emotional intelligence. There's certain ways that you can motivate people. For some, it is to give them a big old kick up the arse. Some people need an arm around their shoulder. And Jack just knew what to say to me. So I think when he said that, yeah, there wasn't in the back of my mind, it was like, okay, brilliant, I've got my flights paid for. But if now I look back, I guess now I'm out of that situation, I can definitely recognize that it was a feeling of, wow, this guy must see something in me. He must do, because that's 2 months worth of wages that he's got to pay me if this goes wrong. And he's going to pay for my flight. So he's backing himself. So I think it's a good lesson for us all that we should also be looking at people around us and asking ourselves, can we be that light, that hope that they need? And that's a tremendous opportunity for us.
And that hasn't happened just once over the past decade. It's happened twice. But the second time it happened at a larger scale. And the second time somebody said, I believed in you, it was a panel of billionaires. So you've had an idea, and then somebody's seen potential in you again. They said, we're going to believe in you again, and we're going to support you. Can you talk to us about getting billionaires to invest into you and your ideas? What happened there?
I've never looked at that as the second moment like that. That's a really nice way of putting it. But so for those of you that don't know, in 2018, Jack and I took this business onto the TV show Shark Tank. Shark Tank Australia, Dragon's Den, depending on where you're watching this. I say Jack and I. It was more so Jack, because I didn't want to go on. I was terrified of public speaking. I thought that we had tremendous growth as a business already, and it was a bit of a risk to put ourselves out there on national TV. But we were fortunate that we did become the first company in the history of Australian Shark Tank to secure 3 investors in Steve, Andrew, and Glenn. The feeling throughout was obviously terrified. I was terrified. I don't think Jack was, but I was terrified. It was nervous, nervous throughout. There was a long due diligence process of 6 months afterwards. So what a lot of people see on the show is about 10 to 12 minutes. We're actually in there for about 2 hours, and then there's a 6-month due diligence process. But there's a really interesting moment that I'll share is I remember sitting in a bar in Sydney after we filmed it, and obviously they've said, yeah, we want to invest, all three of them. And Jack and I went for a beer, and I felt quite emotional. And I remember it really, really clearly. And I remember having the conversation with Jack and saying, how do we fail now? We just removed all of our excuses. Like, you've said the word billionaire a few times. And when you have billionaires back you that have been around the block, they've got successful businesses all around the globe, how do you fail with those resources around you? And that's quite a scary moment to recognize that you have no excuses left. And that was a moment that I didn't expect when somebody backed me. And I think that's why sometimes when people do get backing from people, they actually take a step back and they recoil because their excuses have been taken away. And I know for me, from a sales perspective, I prefer to hide behind the fact that sales was not a learned skill, that sales was not for me, than to try and learn it and fail. And I don't know if that is why a lot of people do reserve from learning how to sell or communicate, however you want to phrase it, because they don't want to be seen as a salesperson, or is it the fact that once you know, we've removed your excuses?
I think a lot of us, we get an inflammation in our excuse-making gland. The gland to make excuse gets a little bit overactive, like a thyroid problem. But it is interesting, isn't it? I see, from my perspective, once people do get somebody who believes in them, they then can easily sabotage their own success because they're now out of the comfort zone. Now they've got no excuses, but they go and find excuses. And we call it self-sabotage, and that feeling of being an imposter creeps in. How did I get here? Yesterday I was just sleeping on the floor, 31 cents in my bank account, and now I'm here. Is it a joke? Is somebody playing a prank on me? Is someone pulling my leg? And I see a lot of people, they go through that. And we can see it clearly with people who win the lottery. The majority of people who win the lottery are bankrupt within a few years because these changes in their life are so far outside of their comfort zones, and it's very easy for them to sabotage their own success. It's like somebody in sales who says, I want leads, I want leads, I want leads, and then all the leads come into the inbox and they don't touch them because all of a sudden they go, am I actually worthy of this? And that can be part of that mental game in sales. So you've had these billionaires invest in you. They've believed in you. You're now out there living the life that you've dreamed of. You're following your dream and living it every single day. Do you have to wake up and pinch yourself sometimes? Am I in Australia? Is this dream in the middle? Is it at the end? Where is it? How does it feel to now be living your dream and selling your way into that dream?
Yeah, I think you said it then, like we self-sabotage and we second guess. I still do that. I still have those moments. Like I had a catch up on Zoom with Dr. Glenn Richards yesterday, one of our investors, and another lady who we're putting a program together with. And I still, even during live, I'm still like, there's Glenn Richards. There he is. I just on Zoom, and he's been with us for 4 years now. So I still have those moments. I get to speak on stage. I get invited to do the debate with 400 people like that. Those moments never stop. But then I have moments. I was in Palm Cove up just past Cairns last week, family holiday, and I went to, actually the first two up was me and my youngest boy, Fox, who's just 18 months old, and we went and sat and watched the sunrise on the last morning together, and we're just sitting there, and that's a moment when I pinch myself more so, I think, because I always wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be a young dad. I'm 39. I've got 2 young boys now, so I didn't have them that young, but that was the dream. Was I wanted to live by the beach. I wanted to be able to walk to the beach, take my dog to the beach. That was the dream. Like, there was nothing to do with money. It was nothing to do with a business. It was just, I love sun, and I love being able to walk down and just hear the ocean. I particularly like going in the ocean, especially up in far north Queensland where the crocs are. And I remember specifically sitting there with Fox last Saturday morning and watching the sunrise, and that's when I'm like, this is cool. This is it. This is what I wanted, because the family kind of, it brought everything together, you know.
I remember when I was in real estate, 1999, and my mentor, John O'Brien, is my uncle. He said, Danny boy, he said, you got to be sold on what you're doing. And he gave me this really good strategy when I was in real estate. He said, when you go out and you list a property, that only presupposes that you're listing it and you're bringing it on the market. But before you leave the listing presentation, you've got to make sure that you've got it sold. And it took me a long time to understand what that actually meant, but it was setting up that sale so that the client, when the right offer came in, the client would take the right offer immediately. And he said, there's something that, as an agent, is you've got to constantly see this property as sold, not for sale, because there's a difference between for sale and sold. So you've got to picture it in your mind, the successful completion of this transaction, which is a sold sign out the front. That's how you measure your success. And so he was big into visualizations. And what he'd do is he'd put a A-frame for sale sign outside of the house. And then on the inside, he'd take a sold sign and paste it on the inside of the board that said for sale that faced the street. But what faced the house was a sold sign. And so the homeowner would walk out of their front door every morning and they didn't see a house for sale. They saw a sold sign facing them. And so he always talked about being sold, making sure you can see it clearly in your mind what the outcome is.
Yeah.
So for you, you've had all these great experiences. You're clear on where you're going, and now you're meeting this next generation of salespeople. And some of them are new, some of them experienced, but they're looking for more solutions, and you're backing them. You're the person now who's believing in them. How does it feel to be the leader and putting these little ducklings under the wing and protecting them through the sales cycle? How's that changed now?
I don't think I really considered it before we started the business. And we actually spoke about this with Lorna probably about an hour ago, our head of customer experience. I got a message last night from one of I take one-on-one clients, 10 one-on-one clients a year, and one of them messaged me yesterday. Just a simple message saying that really, really needed that today. Been struggling from a mental perspective, and we didn't even do any sales training, like nothing to do it. It's just a conversation. And I think being that outlet for people to vent and speak to somebody that's not in their emotional immediate circle, it makes me proud. It makes me happy to see that, to help people realize their potential. I mean, I'm still nowhere near my potential, but me helping them reach theirs is obviously helping me reach mine. So it is easily more impactful than any money that you can make as an organization, as a business, as an individual. Because, as I said, that 60-second legacy, our ability to leave an impact on somebody that will last a lifetime it's a gift. And although I earned some decent money in the UK, I made beer cans. I was an engineer. I'm not knocking beer cans because people drink beer and they get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But I didn't walk out of there going, just made 1,200 beer cans a minute for the last 12 hours. Right? That wasn't really pumping me up. But now, knowing that we've got a footprint all over the world and people are genuinely starting to look at sales in a different light, how do you put a price on that? It's amazing.
My customers, they often wake up in the morning and they have a feeling of being stuck and they don't know what to do next. When people wake up in the morning, how do they normally feel? And what's that feeling or that problem that often leads them to you?
I think it probably plays out as a symptom initially. So it's an anger, it's a frustration. They're going in not knowing where the next dollars are coming from in their business, depending on the size of their organization or if they're an employee in the company. So they're nervous about, they might be the same as I used to be. They're nervous about walking into the sales floor. They're nervous about sales interaction, demonstrations, presentations, prospecting, follow-up. They don't want to do it, so they hide behind an email. So a really, really easy way to see that somebody's not comfortable having that human conversation is that they send more emails than phone calls. They make excuses. We look at the economy, we look at COVID, we look at the leads that you mentioned earlier on. All the excuses I used to make. Julia Gillard used to get the blame for everything back in the day. And I think what it does, it makes people second guess themselves. All other insecurities start to come out. They start to question their relationships. They don't enjoy their sports. They're not eating right. They're not drinking right. And it probably gets to a point, usually too far, that where I need to do something right now. I need to learn how to sell. I need to learn how to articulate the value of what I have to offer. Otherwise, I'm out of this industry or our business is going under. So usually out of fear, what we would love to do is get people to reach out before it gets to that stage. My big, hairy, audacious goal for this organization is that when you register a business, at least in Australia, you're not allowed to register the business unless you have some form of sales and communication training. 95% of businesses go under in 5 years, 60% go under in 3. So businesses are failing left, right, and center. Without sales, business fails is how you started this whole show. So we want to make sure that the fundamental skills, the foundational skills for you to articulate what you have to offer are there for every single business. So you don't go through that. You don't feel like we felt. It doesn't need to be that way. It's actually pretty easy to show somebody how to articulate the value of what they have to offer. It's not as complex as I see.
I lived in Dubai from 2007 to 2012, and I used to be a regular down at Baskin Robbins. And we didn't have Baskin Robbins in Australia, and I'd always heard about it being in America, and I used to walk past Baskin Robbins, and I'd always give you a little scoop of ice cream. They'd say, "You want to try some ice cream?" And they'd give you a little scoop, a little taste tester. And I started to go past Baskin Robbins just to get that little taste tester. And I think for what a lot of people I understand is people just want to try a little bit at start. They will eventually go all in, but they want to just get a little taste of something before they begin. Now, you've got your upcoming boot camp, which is just a little taste test of what you can actually do to transform businesses. What's the boot camp about, and what are the first problems that people can solve by coming along to the upcoming boot camp?
Yeah. So, it's actually a session I've never done before. In this format. So we've got a 3-day boot camp, and I'm doing a little 2-hour taster of it, if you will. And it's on, I think it's June the 2nd off the top of my head. So we've called it the top 10 sales and business mistakes. We are a sales coaching company, sales and communication coaching company. We don't want to position ourselves as business coaches, but what I've realized is it's often the business owners that are making the mistakes. So we really want to attract business owners, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals these days. So I'm going to go through the top 10 mistakes, some of which I've learned from the sharks, from our investors. So there's one absolute fundamental that every single small business, I will say that, every single small business is making. I'm not going to give it away, otherwise you're going to have the actual mistake. I'm going to go through that. I'm going to talk about that there's a thing that we do when we send proposals or we send quotes. That is very traditional for most businesses. We send out the quote, and by virtue of how we do it and how we structure it, it actually forces your prospect back into the market to get quotes elsewhere. So I'm going to share with you what we shouldn't be doing so we can make sure that we keep them within our ecosystem so they don't go elsewhere. I'm going to talk about a mindset shift. So there's one mindset shift that we all go into sales with the wrong sort of mindset, the wrong headspace. And how we can shift that so we actually make us feel comfortable and indeed the prospect. What else am I going to go through? DISC and personality profiling better than anybody I've ever met. So you know about consumer behaviors. One of the biggest mistakes is that we sell how we like to buy. So I'm going to give tips on how we should be selling how they like to buy, not how we like to buy. And I think you shared it on our elite class recently. You said, we're often told to treat people as we'd like to be treated, which is actually the wrong way of going about it, right?
Well, if you're a husband, we should be getting that feedback from our wife all the time. It's true, isn't it? It's the golden rule. We've been forced to be told, treat others the way that you want to be treated. But we've moved past that. It's the platinum rule, which is treat others how they want to be treated. I think that's a key thing people have got to learn.
Yeah, and that's really stuck with me over the last few years since you really introduced me to DISC and personas. So I'm gonna go through that in a little bit of detail. I'm gonna talk about follow up. Follow up is so misguided and done so cheesy and so traditional that you're so predictable as a salesperson or a business
Just
owner.
following up.
Just touching back around like a shark. So I'm going to give at least 3. We've got 30, but I'm going to give at least 3 different tips on how you can elegantly follow up without being a cheesy salesperson.
Talking about follow-up, that was the thing that I learned in real estate, was the money was made in the follow-up. And that was drilled into me. And I picked up business simply because I was better at following up than anybody else. My mates used to say, Daniel's like a pendulum. You hit him one way and he just keeps coming and swinging back. But that money, and a lot of money, in my opinion, is left on the table, and we miss out on so many opportunities because the money is made in that follow-up.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was HubSpot research a few years ago. They said that 80% of sales are made between the 5th and the 12th touch point. So you don't even need to be the best at follow-up. Just got to follow up firstly. That's just the first message. And then there's obviously elegant ways that we can go about it. So we're going to be covering 10 different things. I'm going to talk about trial closing. And if you feel a bit icky and a bit uncomfortable asking somebody for the business, I'm going to give you a 3-step process on how to do that so you feel really, really comfortable as well. So there'll be lots of little nuggets of gold, I'm sure. We're going to go for 2 hours on June the 2nd.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put a link into the show notes and make sure you get over there. I've been trained by Ryan. I've been to his live events in Adelaide. I've been there in Sydney. I've been to the live ones. And I'm a student of Ryan's, and I always take little things away and I add them into my sales toolkit. And what a lot of people don't realize, Ryan, is that if you just get one new idea at the right time, that's enough to make you rich. And if you just get one idea and you improve your performance by 1% in one of the 7 key result areas in selling, and if you just perfect that over a year and you get 10% better in 1 year, because of the law of compounding, you'll actually double your performance in 1 year. And so one idea, and you apply it and just put it on repeat, it can really make you rich. And one of the things that I took away from your session in Sydney, back when you held it just across the road from the Sydney Hilton, was it in the Wesley Centre?
Yeah, it was.
In the Wesley Centre. It was, introducing yourself. And so what I took away was how I explain my client's problem. So my clients, they wake up in the morning, they say, I'm stuck and I don't know what to do next. And that was one of the things that I took away and I applied, and people went, that's exactly what my problem is. And I was talking about the problem without introducing my tools, my products or services. I was saying, this is the problem. And I could connect with people emotionally. And that was a big breakthrough when I learned that. So thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't done it already, make sure you follow Ryan. Follow his good work there at Swish Sales Coaching. And remember, without sales, business fails. You can be good looking. You can be pretty. But if you can't sell, your business will fail. You got to learn how to sell. It's the most important thing. Ryan, for people, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, and what's the best way for them to secure their seat at the upcoming boot camp?
Best way to reach out to me is LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. I'm pretty active across all 3 of them. And then I think if you share as you said, share the link into the comments here for this, they can click on that, or they can just visit swishsalescoaching.com.
Okay. Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, do it immediately. Get those fingers busy on the screen or on the keyboards. Register now, and your mind will be blown away. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, and I'll sneak into the boot camp. I'll see you there.
Will do. Take care.
See you, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, one new idea at the right time is enough to make you rich. And if you want a meditation, and if you want a new affirmation that'll improve your life, every morning I want you to wake up and say to yourself, without sales, business fails. That's your affirmation. And make sure you follow Ryan and register for the boot camp. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you soon. Ciao for now.